Hi everybody, I'm Sarah Konoski. Welcome to APT7. I'm sure you've already had a chance to see some of the amazing artwork on display in this gallery and over at GOMA. I present Weekend Arts on ABC Radio National on a Saturday and Sunday, and I'm delighted to be here to host this panel on Indonesian art, music and design. Indonesian artists have been represented at the Asia Pacific Triennial right throughout its history, but APT7 is the largest representation of artists. I think there are 6 since the first APT. And it's really a showcase of a new generation of Indonesian artists, one that is creating a lot of international excitement. So I'm very happy to be able to introduce to you now 3 artists and 1 curator. Next to me is Ade Darmawan, who's part of Ruang Rupa, which we just saw with the Cuda performing over there. Next to Ade is, and I'll try your proper name first, Hahan, Uji Handoko Eko Saputro.
Yes, perfect.
Known as Hahan. Next to him is Alia Swastika, who is the curator, and at the end is Tintin Wulia, who has video work on show here in this gallery and an installation over at GOMA. So please make them all welcome to Brisbane, to APT. So I thought we'd begin by just hearing from each of the 3 artists about the work that's on show in APT7. And because Ade, we've just heard from the Cuda, let's start with you and some explanation of this mad project, as far as I can tell, please.
Mad project. The band we just performed is actually the Family Butchers. They actually active in the 70s, and then with this project they gather again. They come from different band in the 70s in Brisbane, and then for this project we work together, and then they gather again and then perform like 70s punk rock song from Brisbane, and also 1 song from the Cuda. So the project is actually about. I mean, we as a collective is always very interested in like social political context, but this one is we're really interested how it's actually shifted from 60s, 70s, where Sukarno replaced by Suharto, and that era, I think it's really have a big influence throughout until now. How we actually live now, also talking about the history as well. So this is a project quite layered and quite complex, because this for the first time I think we also deal with a big main history rather than just a small narrative. So this one is actually like mixing all the lifestyles, musics, and music. It's been our personal and also collective's interest since the beginning. So we go through that context from the music, and also see it how it's actually live in the 70s. That's why we come out with inventing a band, or imagining there's a band, a punk rock band in the 70s that is actually addressing lyrics, which is actually almost impossible to have that kind of lyrics and life in the 70s. Mm-hmm. So the museum, or the small installation, it's all about the life of the band that we imagine live in the 70s, and also all the social political context, and also the small narratives around it. Yeah.
And so for people who haven't maybe yet seen the Cuda installation that's over in this gallery, it's a whole mix of archival material like photographs and denim jackets and music videos, and this is stuff that you all created for APT7.
And it's actually really mixed. Some like really creative, some is actually all like really there, and like for example like the history. There's a timeline you have to watch out if you read the timeline, because some of it is actually we invented as well. I mean, I won't tell you what it is, but but like even for to see back again, like what's to put what is actually historical moment or event from 65 to 80s. I think in the same time we also like questioning again like our own history and also memory. So we arguing a lot about that. So what is actually what we should put there. So yeah, that's the result. And like it's really mixed. It's quite slippery actually for us as well.
Because I think one of the interesting or curious things as a visitor or as someone looking at it is there's all this real historical material that you're exploring. You know, the protests against, under Jobyoki Peterson about free speech, the protests in Indonesia under Suharto. So there's all these real bits in it. Why introduce this imaginary band? Why not stick with the historical reality when it's so rich?
Yeah, I think because I think we it's time also to question that again as well. I mean, I mean, a question like a big question on history and also a big question on how we actually how we live today. I think that's, and then there's a tension in it. So that's that tension. I think supposedly bring up something else. So I mean, we're not. Of course, we're interested in like a big main history, but you know, in the same time, let's you know, like let's teasing them, or let's making another not alternative history, but also like the other history, like putting or adding some some stories in the history. And like for example, for us, I mean, like what we thought about the history is actually from the school. You know, I mean, it's very much with control and with with a certain agenda as well. That's why it's like for us, it's very interesting project to question that as well.
And to open up the history in different ways, yeah.
Yeah, and at the same time, I mean, we question also the word history as well, yeah.
Okay.
Memories.
Uh-huh. Hahan, let's hear you talk a little about your work, because you've got quite a lot in APT7. You've got paintings, you've got sculptures, and you've got a kids' book as well. So tell people who haven't yet seen your work what it looks like. What's a Hahan work like?
My work is a one project I'm doing, talking about Indonesian art world with the perspective from younger artists from Indonesia. And the hot mind is a big thing in Indonesia. Art world now is a art market. So yeah, I start talking about it.
So how long have you been practicing as an artist for, Hahan?
I come the ball from the art world in 2007. So it's because start in my generation, in the 2000 kids. I think it's the kids born into 2000. It's like we have a big wave from Indonesian visual art booming. So I born in that era.
Right. And your work, the work that's on show here, is clearly really influenced by street culture and street art and cartooning. Is that usually the kind of work that you are creating? Is work influenced by street forms?
Yeah, because it's no, in my generation, it happened working with the mix with youth culture, street culture, comic, and it's like a lot of younger Indonesian doing that and influenced by influenced by that.
Okay, we'll come back to you, Alia. Let's hear from our final artist, Tintin Wulia, first of all, to give us a sense of the two works that you have on show in APT7.
Okay, well, the two works are Micro Study for Wanton, and the other one is Ini Mini Manimo. Micro Study for Wanton is here, just around the corner here, and it is a corner work actually, so it is at the corner. It's 2-channel video synchronized, and you can see me killing mosquitoes with passports in it. So, and the other one is called Ini Mini Manimo. It's new, and it's especially for APT7. Basically, there are 4 claw vending machines where you can try your luck or your skills to get a new passport if you're lucky. The trick is I only selected 20 passports from out of 194 passports that of the countries in the UN now, and those 20 countries are 10 of the richest and 10 of the poorest, and I mix them up and I sort them out according to the colors. So yeah, so let's see what you'll get. It's free, by the way, but you have to queue.
So obviously both works deal with passports, this experience of migration and of moving, which is a theme in lots of works. I think about Tiffany Chung's work up in Goma of the Sea of Little Glass Animals is also about migration and boundaries. It's nice the way those two works relate. The way that mosquitoes travel about the world in infuriating ways, I guess show that a lot of boundaries are invented. They're not real. There's nothing essential about them. But then the reality of obstacles posed by boundaries is underlined in your ini, mini, mani, mo, where it's luck where you end up. It's luck what papers you have. And I guess like many artists here, Tintin, you've had the experience of negotiating paperwork in many different countries. Tell us just a little bit about where you've lived and where you're living now and your experience with passports.
Just a little bit. I think I've dealt with paperwork since I was born, basically. My birth certificate actually says another name, and I didn't know that name until, my parents actually called me Tintin since I was born, and when I started to read, I just read a label that says my name, and I thought, I asked my dad, oh, is that my real name? Oh yeah, that's your full name. So I have a paper name and I have my real name. So that's, I guess, the first, my first experience with paperwork that somehow relates to paperwork. Growing up as part of a group that's seen as a minority in Indonesia also has something to do with it as well. And growing up, having to keep a secret about my grandfather who was missing in 1965 as well had something to do with it, because we have a set of paperwork that says that we're clean, basically. We're not, part of the whole communist thing, so we can survive. I started working with passports in 2007, and that's after quite a long period of intense interest. I first went out of Indonesia in '95 for a music study in Boston in the US, and I realized a lot of things about Indonesia back then as well. Went back to Indonesia in '98, where the crisis hit and Suharto fell down, and I started to be able to talk about my grandfather. So all those experience, I guess, contributed to the work. In 2001, for example, I started thinking, I want to have the chance to live somewhere else, and it's just really hard to do that with an Indonesian passport. So I applied for an Australian permanent residency, and the process took quite long. And in the midst of it, my younger brother suddenly got a green card lottery. So the experiences are real and personal, but at the same time, it's also quite universal, I guess.
Sure. Thank you. And alias Swastika, for those of you who've seen Hahan's work over at GOMA, one of the pieces, I think it's The New Prophet, is a sculpture that satirizes a two-faced curator. On one side, the face is eating a book that says Art Now, and on the other side, the mouth is full of stuffed with money.
And the cover of the Art Now is his own work.
Right. As the panel's brave curator, Alia, what's your response to that kind of artwork? Is that how do you experience the role of curator in Indonesia? Because it's a very different role than the way curators operate generally in Australia.
Yeah, indeed, it's a very different role. Like if I compare to the role of curator in many other different art scenes in the world, but I felt somehow I got the benefit of being able to practice as a curator in, people always say this is the lack infrastructure system in Indonesia, but I prefer to say that as like spontaneous infrastructure rather than less. So I feel like in a way you've got, it's not so many bureaucratic things because somehow the contemporary art in Indonesia is really, they develop themselves during like period of time, not really gaining support from the government, or there is no like institutional support, like mostly coming from abroad. So somehow it gives you more freedom to define what do you want to do, or how do you define your own role in a way. So what has been illustrated by Hahan somehow is also seeing the tensions between many different elements in the art scenes, like between the artists and the curators and the galleries and institutions. So, yeah.
And so give a bit of a sense about what a curator is doing in terms of the way the art world operates in Jakarta. So as well as putting together shows, you're often acting as a dealer and an agent, I guess, in a way that curators wouldn't usually do here.
We basically doing everything.
Except making the painting.
Yeah, to make it like concrete, it's like we somehow, yeah, it's true, we put up a show and we talk with the galleries, but the way we put up shows or we talk to galleries or other curators, promoters, is in a way, it's kind of a process of education, because you don't really feel like, for example, we don't have contemporary museum. So somehow there is no public education about contemporary arts and what is the role for the society. So yeah, we talk with the collectors, we talk to the public, we talk to the journalists, everything we should do ourselves as a curator. And then so you play your role also as a public educator at the same time, because I'm feeling sometimes the stagnancy in the education system also in the art school, then we also have to educate the artists in a way. So somehow it's like very informal educational role that is I need to underline, and also how to communicate what is happening within the contemporary art system with the broader public.
I'd be interested to hear the perspective from the three artists about what the structure in Indonesia means for the way you make work and make a living as an artist. I mean, Alia was just suggesting there's something positive about the lack of the bureaucracy or the formality, that there's a freedom, a kind of a punk spirit, I guess, which is what we see with the Cuda project. But I imagine it's challenging as well. Who would like to start? Ade, what's your... Because you've also been involved, I think, in the arts board in Jakarta, so you understand how the bureaucracy works and you operate outside of it. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, we are very lucky that we come from very rich family. No, I'm kidding. No, it's yeah, like take it from Alia, for example, like education and also especially like the sport. I think that's many. I mean, I think we are also in the same time like thinking that we should have like this kind of structure, for example, like this big museum. But I think it's very interesting also if we think that it's actually that kind of role, like the role of this museum. It's actually it's been it's been spread, and it's been I think the needs and the necessities actually is always there, and there's always some people who are actually really active to fill that, which is like for example education, what like interactivity, collaboration. I think there's a lot of sort of like alternative space or artist initiative or even activists, social actors. They use art as well. So I mean, I don't think we can we can see it as similar as structure as like in the West, for example. But for sure, that needs or that necessity is always filled by others, and. But for the first, like for example, like I mean, I remember when we start Ruang Rupa, we always think that's how we write about like we lack of infrastructure, there's no support from the government, that kind of stuff, like and the gallery is very commercial. I remember I wrote that 12 years ago, and if I see it now, it's even more commercial.
What do you
Now
mean
it's
commercial in terms of the kinds of art that is represented and sold? Or what do you mean in the
I
Indonesian
mean like
context?
it's simple as like if we can calculate like how much money that is actually circulates in that market and how much money is actually circulates, like for example how much is actually state or the government spending for the arts, for example, and also the others. So it's like this constellation. I think it wouldn't like really into a chain because like I think everyone is actually making their own link or making their own system without like really thinking in general sense. So that's like infrastructure, for example. I mean, like every province, actually, every city we have actually our city government. They call it Taman Budaya. It's actually art center. But the thing is, it doesn't work or it doesn't relevant. It doesn't vital enough because they don't have. It's very typical government institution. It's very fat and a lot of bureaucracy, and that's all. It doesn't work as a vital element that can contribute or that can bring a lot of contribution to the change or to the development of the art scene. So that's why there's a lot of initiative and projects, for example, which is not really in the radar of a lot of people. I think also in the art scene, such as curators and critics, I think I think it should be more open to that kind of practice. I think because what we think about or what we think always about the contemporary art in Indonesia is always based on the gallery, which is we always think that that's the only thing that happened, but actually it's so active
So
outside that scene.
Because Ruang Rupa, Ruru, is a collective, and collectives are quite common in Indonesian art. There's a few different collectives on show at APT7. What kind of stuff happens at the Ruru headquarters?
Ruru
I mean, I would say-
headquarters. They have not a branch in here.
I think I will talk a bit more about like how it's actually the approach of these collectives. What I see it from the last 10 years, I think like a lot of collectives or initiative is actually playing two roles. Like first is like they're producing artistic production, just like their artistic statements through collaboration with themselves and also with the public, for example. And then the second one, they also mix it. The other approach, which is they become like institution, like a public institution, which also organize like workshops, educations, publishing, writings, archiving. I mean, if the government doesn't have archive program, so it's actually many collectives or many initiatives is actually doing a lot of archiving, like from like street art, videos, and also also visual art. So it's like really this position or this role is actually been done based on the necessity rather than as a political a state policy. Yeah, so that's how it works. If you ask about Ruang Rupa, yeah, that's what we do. I mean, we have a lot of programs from archiving, research, publishing. We organize festivals. We gather people, workshops, interdisciplinary programs. There's a lot of things. Yeah.
And Hahan, what's your view on this? Because as we've said, your artworks are making fun or engaging with the art world, the difficulty of trying to succeed, the pressures, the competition. How much is that a reflection of your experience as an artist in Indonesia? Is it as ugly or as difficult, as hard work as your pictures suggest?
For younger artists, we have we call it usaha dagang. It's like a small factory for the artists. So business unit, if we cannot selling real work, so we start making merchandise like t-shirt, like a poster, like toys, or something can be selling more easy. And after that, the money will be we make 50% for life, 50% to doing work. So I think, yeah, we have why, because government not giving any money from the arts in Indonesia, or giving lots of support for that. So we try to get with another alternative to get the money and still survive. Yes, like that. And maybe we can apply to be a residency in another country and get some money. Yeah.
What about, because I know there's been some criticism that the Australian government doesn't have cultural centres in other countries the way that Germany or the Netherlands or France has art centres in Indonesia. Are they spaces that are useful for Indonesian artists? Like Alliance Française or the Goethe Institute, that Indonesian artists can access material and support from other countries?
I think you can make another APT again to doing that. So it's like another, because yeah, for the APT you can invite lots of artists from another Asian Pacific, and you can maybe make some event like Australian Indonesia more big, and you can take lots of artists from Indonesia to doing it here.
Tintin, what about your experiences? Because I know you haven't exhibited in Bali, where you grew up, partly because the infrastructure isn't there to really make it viable for you.
Yeah, I think, I have similar experiences, of course, but I think what I can add is that the lack of support and infrastructure inside Indonesia basically personally pushed me to look outwards. And it's true what you said about the cultural centers from other countries in Indonesia. They actually supported quite a lot. And it's quite interesting that the first piece of artwork for which I received money, and for which when I started thinking, oh, it is actually sellable, was actually a short film that was bought by SBS, Eat Carpet, for their Eat Carpet program back in the early 2000s. And they actually found out about my work from the Oberhausen film market. And that was the inclusion for that was supported by the Goethe Institute back then. But of course, I mean, we always try to find other means of support from, the commercial sector. I worked as an editor as well, and so it was really part of my daily life back then. So yeah.
And Elia, I mean, Adem was mentioning how commercial, how the market has really taken off for Indonesian art. I think the last year or two there have been a lot of significant international exhibitions prices are really starting to skyrocket for certain artists. I guess maybe a little version of what happened with the Chinese art market a decade or so ago. Are most buyers for contemporary Indonesian art Indonesian buyers, or does most of the interest coming from outside of Indonesia, maybe even outside of the Asia-Pacific region?
Actually, I'm not really expert to answer that question. But I think before we continue the conversation into that part, I want to underline the fact that maybe Ade had mentioned before about this. Is kind of, we are talking about the lack of infrastructure in Indonesia. So somehow, and at the same time, we see the optimism from the raising of the market in a way. But I think if we look at what had happened like 20 years ago, 10 years ago, actually there is no real market as we had now. So actually the artwork itself had been survived for more than 25 years without the real market, what we call as market now. There is another economical system happening in the country that you cannot really compare to what has happened in the world. So somehow I felt like we are reaching the stage where the survival stage already somehow we overcome, not in that very clear way, but in a way we prove that the artists, they are doing practice not for the money, but it is for making art themselves in a way, because Ruang Rupa has been exists for how many? 15 years almost?
Almost
13 years? Yeah, it's okay. And then there is another spaces like they exist for 20 years, some other collective, they exist for 25 years, and the Indonesian Visual Art Archive exists for 15 years also. So somehow it's proof the way they can survive without the real market. So for me, what is important now is not seeing like market as one very reliable things, but somehow now like me and Ade, we are now working how can we advocate in a way the infrastructure, all the practitioners and elements who are working in the art system, so we can somehow making our own system and building our own art scene, which is quite different with the West. I think this is what makes it beneficial, because somehow within starting from zero, you have the freedom to read or to reinterpret your own history, not really being defined by the Western system of the arts, and then we can define our own system. I think that's the most important point. And then we talk about market. For me, the role of the market these days is more putting art as something as professional, profitable way of life for the artist. Like Hahan said, it's kind of business unit in a way, the way artists put it. But the spirit of making art is not really relying on the market for the last 3 decades. It's make it faster, or the development become faster. We have many galleries and artists, they have more resources to produce the work, many commission works, but it's not the real core of what is happening. It's kind of, that's how I see the development actually. This is like the things that making it happen in a way, but not the real fundamentals. Yeah, without government we are okay, without market I think we are also okay.
So when you talk about the shifts that are happening in the art world and this extraordinary development in the financial part of the art world and the art market, that of course is playing out against the backdrop of this incredibly turbulent time in Indonesia's own history. So the 1997 Asian financial crisis, there's the fall of Suharto in 1998, the whole transition to democracy. I mean, this must have had an enormous impact on the way people are making art and on the kind of way that people are dealing with social realities, which has been a part of early generations of Indonesian artists on show at APT, but is being dealt with differently, it looks like, by this generation. Who wants to take on art and politics in Indonesia? That small, brief subject.
Who's the eldest here? Who's the oldest?
Well, I guess it's, if we think about how much change is happening in Indonesia politically and socially. Can you separate how that's affected you just as citizens and how it's affected your art practice? Or are they all too tied up together?
Ade, you want to answer or?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. It's. I mean, it used to be like really vertical, but now it's just like horizontal. Like, yeah, your enemy can be your neighbors. So that's one thing. There's a lot of. It's become like a big, huge arena that people is actually fighting each other, poking, that kind of stuff. It's really. I mean, when, for example, like in Jakarta, for example, like public space, for example, it's become like a big arena. How is actually people in the name of many things, people in the name of organizations, beliefs, fascism, whatever, or corporates or capitalism. It's like really just like putting their message on the public space. So it's a big, huge arena. I think that's what happens after '98. But in the same time, I think that's what happened with the artists as well. I think artists should like really play a different role because it's not anymore like before, you know, like protecting the people or representing the people against the state or against the power. I think now artists should become like duri dalam daging, itu bahasa Inggrisnya apa ya?
Duri dalam daging apa?
It's like thorn on the inside the meat.
Enemy under blanket.
Oh, what?
Enemy under blanket.
Enemy inside the blanket?
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, I think now the artists should criticize a lot the society more, because it's really. I think in 80s or 90s, I think artists always put their position as the guard of the people. But I think now we know that actually it's not only government who are like really bastard, but also the people. Your neighbors is actually bastard.
So the range of enemies can expand.
I mean, that's if we want to take on the approach as enemies, but you know, but it's also in the same time there's a lot of a civic initiative which is never really happened before. That also I think take on a lot of. I think the artists should also really question the position because there's so many activism, so many initiatives actually taken on by the people. I think we're really quite lucky. I think in Indonesia society is quite strong. Like before, like the state is very strong, but now I think the society is quite strong. In any meaning, of course, you know, it's not always good, but I think that's what happened. So there's a lot of change as well. I think technology, media, and of course the distribution of artistic strategy. I think that's really different from '98 and now. Yeah.
Thanks. Anyone else of you want to comment on the changes post '98? Yeah.
I do actually. Okay. I think '98 was really significant for me because I think before '98 I had never thought that I would become an artist. And actually '98 allowed me to start making sense of the secret that I had to keep, basically, about 1965, because of the personal experience going through 98 and how my family reacted as well. And yeah, so I think we thought if 98 never happened, then I would never become an artist, basically.
Elliot, is there anything?
Yeah, I don't too much know about the 98 era because I product from Suharto. So
So say again, because
I'm in 98, I'm still in the middle high school.
right. Okay.
Yeah, so I just still listening Sex Pistol, doing skateboarding, graffiti or something. So I just happy with doing about that. So I just have opinion. If I know from the gossip from the senior artists, is if before 98 we have one enemy, and now in our generation we have lots of enemy, and we're searching new enemy. So yeah, like that maybe. So now is like artists from younger artists now like getting like a hipster, getting cool, going to discotheque, doing lots, have fun, and make art. After that, selling the art, being a rich, buy car, buy house. More easy now being the young artist, maybe.
Yeah. Elia, is there anything you wanted to add to that, or?
Yeah, I think there are many differences of practice that you can see these days in the art scene in Indonesia. I mean, like compared to before Suharto, for example, like the role of artist was quite definite, like become part of to distribute the political issue and become real part of political practice. But these days, like you have many choices. What do you want to be as an artist? Like the role itself is really depend on your personal beliefs. Which is like I feel in like Ade is very political in his way, and he's always political. I think in a way, I have to say this. And then like Hahan also you can see that he has his own statement about how he see the political context for his work, and also Tintin. So this is what I felt so like working in Indonesia. There are so many different roles that you can take as an artist, and still there is the opportunity. If you want to connect with the political situation, there are so many issues that you need to deal with as an artist that you cannot really ignore, because you're really living as part of this very developing and faster changing society. So I feel like artists always become part who like reflecting in a way and also documenting the whole changings of what is happening in the society. I think that's like most important part of the practice of artists these days.
We're going to open it up to questions from you guys in just a moment. Before we get there, I just wondered if you had anything to say about now in this 20th anniversary of the Asia Pacific Triennial, which has had such a big impact on the way that Australians see Asian art from Asia, and indeed what Asia is and where those boundaries lie. From the perspective of artists and curators working in Indonesia, has the APT been an important part of your horizon over the last 20 years? Has it been significant for artists in Indonesia?
I think Hahan answer first because I feel now he's local, younger here. He's local.
Yeah,
Well, you weren't even riding your skateboard 20 years ago, Hahan.
He's very popular.
Yeah, I think it's a good opportunity for young artists, actually from Indonesia. And for me, it's like a first time I have exhibition in museum, and with a big thing, everything have a well done organization, and yeah, yeah. I'm so I don't know what to explain. Honor. Yeah, I'm so honored about be a part of the APT7. Sorry, my translator in there.
What were you going to say earlier about what impact APT has had on Indonesian artists? I mean, is it a big thing for an artist to be shown as part of APT?
Yeah, maybe we discussed yesterday in our interview, like the first time when APT started, like late of 90s, I think APT and also at that time Fukuoka Triennial become like two most important art events that putting Indonesian artists like to be recognized internationally, and they played the role until quite a long time. But then the situation changed. As we know, the market has expanded also the practices of the artists. So it's kind of a very different role these days. Like at that time, artists feeling like they become like international artists after they're in the biennales or triennales. But these days also artists going international also by the other way. Maybe they're going to art fairs or international commercial galleries. So is this really playing different roles, which is like, it's not meaning that it's not that important anymore, but it's different way of dealing with international and global artwork. Like maybe in the art fairs, it's more like, let's say, dealing with the commercial, but being in the Triennale or Biennale is the artists, they put themselves in more like discourse and intellectual platform in a way.
Well, let's hear. We've got 10 minutes or so. So you have a question.
Thank you. It's been a very interesting conversation going from Ade talking about history through to self-organization, the role of artists, the role that artists play in society and culture, through to the market. So I've got a question for Ade and possibly also for Alia, that Ruru exhibit internationally in biennales and these types of structures, and I see that there's a kind of fetishization around that historical and social transformation that has happened within Indonesia, within its contemporary and modern history. So we're just
having a bit of problem with hearing. So
hello.
if I a bit closer would be great.
From the beginning?
I think if I'm understanding you, one of the points you're making is that in international.
I'll repeat it. So that Ruru exhibit internationally. I see that in these types of institutional frameworks, there's a bit of fetishization around the historical and social transformation. So how does a group or an artist kind of deal with that? Or how does a curator, like Ali, how do you deal with the institution?
So do you feel like your history is there's this fetishization, we're all having trouble with that word, of a certain period in history, and is that...
That's actually, because what we approach that the history is actually with full of doubts. So, I think that's, this is a bit off, but I think if you see from the 98 and until now, there's a lot of concerns on archiving and collecting historical or rewriting historical or like publishing or distributing a lot of historical literature or historical material that actually cannot be distributed before 98. So actually there's a big concern on that. I think it's more about like actually who's taking control rather than, we've been traumatized by centuries that our history has actually been taken, and then after that, in Suharto regime as well, it's been taken by them as well. So I don't know. This is just my speculation. Actually, after '98, there's a lot, not only in art. Actually, there's a lot of friends, groups, organization, researcher who actually publish, distributing so many historical materials to the public. So I think it's like really about more about that rather than fetishization. Sorry, it's really like it's like wearing the celebration. Like it's a lot of things that we've not in control, and then now we are in control. That was like distributing, publishing, also keeping the knowledge, actually keeping the history, and also how to distribute it. I think it's more about that. There's a lot of organizations in art, for example. I mean, like I can point out like more than 5 who are actually like for films and art that actually like really working on archiving, even like now, like the now history, not only like the past history, but also like the now history, like really taking that as important thing to keep or to control. I think it's more about that, you know, like because we've been lost on that side for many years. So I think that's the period of what's going on now, actually.
Yeah, I think if we like reflecting again what is like Hahan mentioned before, for example, that even he felt like he doesn't know about the 98, for example. I think that's how it started, that the younger generation also wants to find out their own truth about history. So many of like art projects that based on history also depart somehow from that kind of idea of finding what is happening in the past. But it's true. Sometimes we have like joke, if you want to be taken more seriously in the art, like do something political, talk about history. In a way, it's a shortcut for the artist to be taken seriously. But I felt like that's the superficial joke, but in a way it's also showing what is happening for the younger generation, because like as Ade mentioned, maybe we've been lost for quite a long time about what is truth in the history, which is like the truth itself is subjective. It always can be constructed or manipulated. So sometimes I feel that's why also many of the projects that depart from the history is also trying to re-question again what is the truth. Or even like their project about the Cuda is really trying to select what is truth in the history and how history being shaped, manipulated, constructed by many different subjects in the society. So there are many kinds of this project in Indonesia somehow. And the second one maybe is like in the perspective art from the art history. I feel this is also connected to the history that in Indonesia most of the arts practice and strategy is really related to the like narrative style. Like most of like modernists or painter or the period after that, they are really narratives. So somehow most of the Indonesian artists, they are like creating something that they need the base or narrative foundation. So that's how they start to talk about history in the other hand, because this is quite somehow like not really shortcut, but the easy way to reflect like a big narration as like maybe not as a nation anymore, but as an individual in a state, like in Indonesia these days.
Can I add a bit? Yeah, just like simple example. Just actually a few months ago, there is one publisher company from Jakarta who always, in several years, publishing a lot of very rare material on the historical, our history. They actually just published the book entitled of, we actually, like Indonesia is actually not being colonized 350 years by the Dutch. So it's good for you, Thomas. Maybe more, I don't know. But you know, like that's what I mean. It's been a lot of, it's been challenged a lot. So it's a challenge actually.
Can I add to that as well? I think fetishization of history is like fetishization of shoes or sex or just anything. And I think it does happen. but I think when I think of my role as an artist, I make artwork, and I think my artwork is actually open-ended, and I really like as long as I'm making the work honestly, and I try to be honest myself, I believe that it can engage people, and the result of that engagement is really out of my control. So if it becomes fetish, then it's up to the audience. And so it would be, I mean, I think for me it's really interesting as well to see what comes out of it, because then for me that reflects the whole situation of the society as well. So yeah.
We've probably got time for one more question. Yes, sir.
I'm just reflecting on the process of history making in Indonesia, which is an interesting process. Gunawan Muhammad, the great Indonesian writer, writes often about the process of forgetting history in the Indonesian context because of trauma. Trauma of '65, but also trauma of the Javanese War, which was basically a genocide that the Dutch held in Indonesia. So this is the problem, that there is a forgetting of history rather than making of history, including a forgetting of Indonesia rather than a making of Indonesia. And there's a very prominent book, Menjadi Indonesia, which is actually the making of Indonesian history by an Indonesian historian who realterates Dutch text as well. One of the history that I want to provoke is, what if Suharto, or at least people who are affiliated with Suharto, come back, and come back rather soon? I understand that steps are undertaken for certain people who were in power in the past, that their aspirations are to become the future Indonesian president. And already at the local level, this process is happening. Are we then going to continue skateboarding, or are we going to try to make history before it is being remade?
Making the history with a skateboard.
But it's also like
skateboarding.
we are being forced to forget in a way.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, we should redefine how we remember, but also how to forget. But yeah, I think making it's very interesting, or adding, like, because it's like, for example, when we do research for this project, we find a lot of things actually. Of course, it's not evident here. For example, like, I don't know if you guys know about the new movie by The Act of Killing, about 65, killing of Communist Party in that time. It's actually a little bit touched this project as well, when we have to talk with a lot of people who are actually active in 70s, and this is actually really true. Like, there's a lot of people in that time, like like the guard of Suharto is like driving around with samurai with the blood in it, and it's really there. So it's a very complex. For some people, history is something that it's there, and you cannot just easily question it, because it's something to do with life as well. But there's always, I think there should be, or it's a must, initiative to make it or question it again. But for this project, for example, what we do is actually like really play with a quite anarchistic way, that is actually even actually the Cuda, if I give you a hint, the Cuda itself in this project is actually exists in 70s, but actually it's actually the band is actually exists now. So the Cuda is actually have like two parallel living in two parallel time. So that kind of stuff. I mean we have to. I think the challenge is actually how, as a collective, or as a society have to deal with it, which is that's really our homework.
And I think when you go and look at the work by each of these three artists, you see wrestlings with history and various proposals about Indonesia's future too. So if you haven't yet had a chance to go and look at them, please make sure you do today. And please join me in thanking Ade Darmawan, Hahan, Alias Swastika and Tintin Wulia.